Hi ladies and gentlemen, Michael Leslie here, and I got another video or something I just thought about. I thought I'd talk about. So in the news, you've seen a lot of stuff with immigration, and there's a lot of in the United States where I'm at, and there's a lot of stuff like Alcatraz, alligator Alcatraz, and immigration, and they're willing to take people apart, take people. It's kind of like an interesting timing, right? Particularly with a lot of things that's happening. And if you've been watching my videos, you know that there's been something going on with the divine feminine, or the divine feminine is not at her full potential, primarily because it looks like she has been intentionally hijacked or turned off. And it looks like from what I'm understanding is she's been turned off because she is the bridge to the upper world. So what happened is if you a lot of people are Christian, so I'm going to use the concept for Christianity. So in Christianity they had the Virgin Mary, right? And then the Virgin Mary was able to activate Jesus or the upper world. Now if you understand these mythologies are talking in symbols, really what's happening is they're saying that your lower self would activate your higher self. So Jesus is a reflection of their higher self. But the lower self though is connected to the divine feminine, because divine feminine is connected to the lower world. Remember, Earth is a feminine planet, so that feminine planet is also connected to the feminine body. So what happened is the feminine is connected to the Holy Spirit, which is connected to your body, but which is also connected to your spirit that needs to activate in the upper world. But what happened is, based on the lower world, we have something called free will, and free will is basically our ability to manifest. So what happened is the upper world cannot interfere with the lower world unless we have the free will, or with our remembrance and with our sovereignty. We wish and we want the upper world. So we kind of have to will the upper worlds to come down, but they can't interfere with us if we don't have that. So in essence, you would understand that the gateway to the upper world would be your consciousness, right? Because to have higher will is to have consciousness, and your consciousness is integrated into your inner verse. So you need to go into your inner verse and manifest and say, oh, I really want to make contact with God. But if you're not into your 0 point energy, which is right here, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, that you're not going to be manifesting fully, because your body or your soul or your Holy Spirit will be outside. So a lot of what's going on is, it seems like our the powers that be is harvesting our attention. And what I mean by that is they are basically, when Christianity talked about Jesus sacrificed himself, in essence, it looks like the divine feminine, which is connected to the divine feminine, which is the body, which is the Holy Spirit, sacrifices self. So therefore we can learn. And what that's basically saying is, we are sacrificing ourselves by playing the rules or roles of someone else who's basically taking our spiritual gifts. So our spiritual gifts is our spiritual codes that are connected to our DNA. Most of us have spiritual, what I like to call golden chain, and that golden chain is connected to your spiritual lineage. And that spiritual lineage is coming from your ancestors. So for example, your ancestors could have a really powerful bloodline because it has ancestors that were able to tap into the upper world. And because maybe an ancestor was able to do that primarily with indigenous cultures, because they were really connected to earth, that lineage can be passed on through generations. So what happens is, like, someone who has a really nice bloodline, they can access spiritual information without doing the work because their ancestors did it. But what I'm learning by looking at the universe is, it looks like the powers that be knew that this was going to be happening, and it was going to happen between the matriarchal part of the DNA or the feminine line. So what they did is they turned off the feminine wisdom or the feminine knowledge, so therefore people do not get access to that divinity within them. So in other words, they sacrifice the divine feminine. And that's why in Christianity there's like the Last Supper. The Last Supper is the last supper of the divine feminine, and in essence the 12 tribes is taking the divine feminine, chopping her up in 12 pieces, which correlates with Osiris being chopped up in 12 pieces or 13 pieces. Because remember, Osiris represents order. So divine feminine represents order, law and order, because the upper worlds have laws and orders, commandments that we must follow. The lower worlds don't like law and order. So what they did is they took the divine feminine, which is the bridge to the upper world, chopped her up in 12 pieces, made her into the 12 tribes of Israel. They primarily made it tribes, and they made it, like because those are masculine, because they don't want people to know. So what I'm decoding, it looks like the divine feminine was actually Christ on the cross. And so what happened was the Mary Magdalene was chopped up in 12 pieces, which basically, it was like a sacrifice and maybe some death ritual. And then her higher self, they were able to sacrifice on the cross, basically saying that anyone who takes part in these rituals we're fragmenting your divine feminine aspect, which is the bridge to the upper world, and then we're killing your higher self. So in essence, that stops people from accessing the divine feminine. But don't worry, the fact that we're talking about this and the fact that you're able to just understand what I'm saying, we're breaking the spell, because this is all part of shadow alchemy. So shadow alchemy is talking about the shadow of your consciousness, where your shadow consciousness is basically where they can manipulate your manifesting ability through your ignorance. And usually when they do that, they try to manipulate your shadow, but also manipulate your emotions. And so what they would do is they would colonize people who had this brilliant lineage of spirituality, like let's just say whatever. They would take their lineage, invert it, so they give us the inverted. So and from what I'm learning, like, it looks like Jesus was actually a woman, but they inverted to make it a white man instead of a black woman, made a white man, gave it to us instead of making her alive, made her dead. So everything's inverted. So you can really analyze them because everything's inverted. But why I'm saying that is because the divine feminine is waking up. They realize that they're losing control, because their whole empire, like the Tower of Babel, was built on the sacrifice of the death of the divine feminine. But as she wakes up, like the Tower of Babel, then their whole empire falls apart. So it looks like they're looking for other hosts or divine feminine to try to replace the divine feminine rising, but the cosmic mother in the upper world sees what's happening now. They just made all rituals deactivated, and no more harvesting of indigenous people, no more harvesting of people's lineage. And that's what's happening now. So I think that's what's happening with immigration, and why they're so like, oh, we gotta get more money, we gotta get more, because they're kind of like vampires. They vampires, they basically steal DNA, harvest it, sacrifice, let people not know. And that's really what I'm decoding what's happening. So I'm a quick video. Hope you guys like it. I'll see you in my next. Peace.